there.
There. Test 1 2, test 1 2. Okay. Good. Good evening, citizens, council, and staff. This is the City Council meeting, regular meeting for Tuesday, January 5th, 2016. Can you call the roll?
Mayor Beckman,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Brinkman. Here. Councilmember Cernanek.
Present.
Councilmember Clark.
Here.
Councilmember Cole.
Here.
Councilmember Hopping.
Here.
Councilmember Valdez.
Present.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The agenda has been posted and presented to City Council. Are there any changes or addition to the agenda?
It's in the back.
See it down there?
You know, I didn't hit that, so I don't know.
No?
I can't see if it's on or not.
No, it's in.
Okay, it's been plugged in.
And water.
Stand by for a technical difficulty here.
Water.
Yeah, well, that's.
I don't know what to do.
I can unplug it and plug it in again.
You could try that. I don't know what it is. I'll use my phone.
Get your hand in there? Oh, there it went. On.
Poof in the other direction.
Hey, you got a new career. Oh, there it went.
And now it went off. We'll just use my phone for
Kind of like an
tonight,
antenna.
and I'll get it fixed
Okay.
tomorrow.
Great.
Sorry about that.
Okay. Were there any changes or addition to the agenda? Next item on the agenda is public comment. Public comment is an opportunity for anyone to express opinions or ask questions that are not part of the public hearings. There will be two opportunities for public comment at the beginning of the meeting regarding consent agenda and general business items, and later in the meeting before council reports. An immediate response should not be expected. Anyone who would like to speak during either public comment, please sign the green first public comment sheet or the green second public comment sheet located on the table at the entrance to the council chamber. We expect the comments to be civil, and disrespectful behavior will not be tolerated. There's a 3-minute time limit. I have the sign-up sheet for the first public comment. I have no one who has signed. Is there anyone who would like to speak regarding the consent agenda or general business items? If there is, please come forward. Seeing no one. Going to move to the next item on the agenda. This is the consent agenda. Consent agenda items may be adopted by a single motion. All ordinances must be read by title prior to the vote on the motion. Any consent agenda item may be removed at the request of any council member. Consent agenda item 5A is Resolution 1-2016, is a resolution specifying the location where notices of public meetings are to be posted and the newspaper where notices and other information required to be published will be printed for 2016.
Pull that, please.
It's pulled. Consent agenda item 5B, Resolution 2-216, is a resolution approving an amendment to an agreement with the Urban Drainage and Flood Control District and Arapahoe County regarding design and construction of a drainage and flood control improvements for the South Platte River at Reynolds Landing. Consent agenda item 5C, Resolution 3-216, is a resolution supporting an application by the city on behalf of the Littleton Public Schools for an Arapahoe County open space grant for playground improvements at Damon Runyon Elementary School. Consent agenda item 5D is ID number 15-344, approving the certification of the December 15th, 2015 minutes.
Pull that.
Okay, I have items A and D have been pulled. I'm looking for a motion to approve the items that remain on the consent agenda.
So moved, items B and C.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Vote.
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
Okay, now we'll move to the items which were pulled from the agenda, consent agenda. And that the first one is item 5A, pulled by Councilmember Valdez.
Great, thank you. I have a couple of questions just on some of the information for the city manager on this. We're going to advertise at certain or specific locations, including Littleton Independent. What are the visitation of numbers that come into each of those locations, as well as distribution, circulation for Littleton Independent?
Say the question, what's the...
We're going to post the information at City Hall and a few other places. What are the numbers of the attendance of folks that actually walk into those locations?
Don't have that off the top.
Do we know that they're the right locations?
They're the standard locations.
I don't know if your mic is on down there.
The library, the courthouse, and the Littleton Center.
Yeah, do we know any idea about what the numbers are?
I don't know the numbers, but I do know that they're very high at the library.
Yes.
And a lot of citizens, young and senior, go in there and look at the agendas there, and they look at the agendas here. I don't know what the traffic is really at the court. I mean, people come to traffic court. I don't know whether they're really looking at that bulletin board or not.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
I can't really tell you that.
What is the circulation then for Littleton Independent? And do we know of any of the other papers that come into Littleton? You know, do they rival any of those numbers?
Last time we looked at the Independent, it was about 1,800, which was about 10% of the homes. It's relatively small circulation percent.
And then last, I know we use the next door to put out information. Would that be a reasonable place or allowable place to put out this information?
Well, we also put all of this information on our website and connections to it on our Facebook. I don't know whether they tweet it out, but they are there, and I don't know whether they don't use Nextdoor for it right now.
But yeah, that's what I'm asking. Is that a place that maybe we could go to?
I think we could. I'm not sure we would want you to put it in as one of the required locations because it's an opt-in type scenario. The number, and I can't recall what the percentage of home sign-ins are for it. And like any social media, it comes and goes, and some people use it, some people don't, but I don't think there's any downside similar to what the city clerk just mentioned about Facebook and tweet.
Oh, no, I'm not saying take away any of those. I'm just trying to think of a way. Littleton Independent is an opt-in also, but I'm thinking if it's allowable, maybe we could have, add that. Maybe not the whole agenda because it's a lot of pages, but maybe just, or just the agenda without the backup data and information where to go to. Because I think there is a substantial amount of people that are using that more and more.
Correct.
Cool. That's it.
Phil.
Correct me if I'm wrong on this, but you can also have the opportunity to subscribe on a notice for the agendas being posted for whatever meeting, so that if citizens so choose, they can go onto the website and actually post for a subscription to the agendas.
Great.
Any, Councilmember Clark?
I was going to pull this if Jerry didn't, but my issue is, we don't say where on the website the meeting notices are posted, and there's a lot of places on the web, and sometimes there's multiple places where the meeting appears, and sometimes they aren't always kept in sync. So I'd like to pick a page, put it in the resolution, and be that the page where the official notices for meeting notices happens at. Because right now, we have a schedule of meetings page, we have a view meetings online page with agendas, then we have meetings that aren't online that go to a different page.
So we're in the middle of redoing our website, so I wouldn't want you to name a page because it may not exist in a couple weeks. I think.
So why don't
if-
we just
if-
pick a page called meetingnotices.html?
Well, rather than putting it in the resolution, why don't you let us manage that and get it consistent? Because part of what we are doing and have done in historic websites and in future, and most do, is allow people to come in from multiple directions and get that information from multiple pages, depending upon how different people utilize websites. You know, the standard example would be some people like it across the top, some people like it on the side. The issue that you're describing is probably more around the administration of that and ensuring that all the information is even and accurate and consistent in that. So if that's the concern, let us address the concern. But I think if you name a page in there, you're limiting our ability to really get that information in the best way possible to people. So I hear the concern about the administration, and we'll address that.
Well, part of it is about the consistency, but part of it is about somebody wanting to find out when meetings are going to happen and not knowing which one of the many pages we
So-
use for meeting notifications is the official notice.
So if you were going to put something into the resolution, which again, I wouldn't recommend to give us flexibility, but maybe rather than naming a page, you say that there will be a direct link on the front page to the meetings, because we have that now.
That would work if we have a direct link to where the official notices for the meetings
Yep.
goes.
Yep, which we currently have, but happy to have that in the resolution.
Okay.
That's a doable one. Thanks.
And on the next door comment, is that something that you look into,
Yeah, we'll just do that.
just the
That's-
agenda
do it.
portion?
Yep.
Oh, that'd
I'll
be
ask
cool.
him how to get it up there, and I'll do it.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion.
Could I just get a clarification? So in the resolution, we say designates the City of Littleton website, comma, and then there is a web address, www.littletongov.org, and then it continues on with other locations. Is that the place where we're talking about putting
Right
these
there, I
changes?
just put a direct link to the notice page.
Okay, and I don't
Agenda
think we need
notice
an
page.
amendment. I think we have clarity on that issue, or do we want to amend the,
I think we need to amend it, but I'm happy with how that clarification has been
Yeah, well,
expressed.
I mean, again, I would prefer that you keep the approval pure in its sense of where the notices are going. It's on the website. We've heard the concern, we'll address it through administration of it. So we certainly heard the direction from council.
thank you. Do I have a motion then?
I'd like to make a motion.
Go ahead.
I move to approve the resolution designating the locations where public meetings are to be posted and the newspaper where notices and other information required to be published will be printed for 2016.
Second.
Vote?
Uh,
Doug?
I move to amend Section 1 of the resolution to add after www.littletongov.org, put with a direct link on the main page of the website.
Second.
Can I just
That would go
suggest you
where
mention
again,
it as,
Right after the, on the
I know, and the.
line 37,
Right, yeah.
right after the littletongov.org.
Right, and you want to have the direct link going to the Littleton, right?
Yes.
Cool, thank you.
and Doug,
People will look at the resolution to find out where to go. This is where we specify what we're going to do. If we're going to say we put it on the bulletin board and where the bulletin boards are located, there's no point in not saying where it is on the website.
rather than listing it as main page, can we say home page? That's standard notation, so. Second?
It was already seconded by Councilmember Cole.
Or third.
So on the amendment, we have a motion and a second, and it's to place on line 37, after the web address for littletongov.org, words that say, with a direct link on the homepage,
With a direct link on the homepage.
with a direct link on the homepage.
That'll make me happy.
All right.
And apparently my second.
Okay, so we're prepared to vote on the amendment. Any further discussion? All in favor? Let's have a vote.
The vote is 6 in favor with Councilmember, or Mayor Pro Tem Brinkman voting no. The motion carries 6-1.
So now we need the motion and the second for the main. We have the second. Did we get the second on the initial?
We did, Councilmember Cole.
Okay. Are you ready for a vote?
Yes.
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
Okay, that
Oh, we have one more, don't we?
5D.
now we have items D, which was pulled by Councilmember Clark.
Yes. I think that the methodology that we're using for minutes now is pretty much unworkable. I think that's obvious by the fact that our own staff doesn't know what it is that we've approved. Two recent examples is the streetscape study and the $300,000 overage on the River's Edge thing. Not having written minutes where we can go and see what the vote is, what the motions are, makes operating an extremely difficult thing to do. For example, two of the tasks of the mayor are to authenticate and sign that the ordinances that have been passed are actually what was passed by the council. If you don't have the minutes in front of you to know what the vote was, and more specifically, what any amendments were made to that, it's hard to validate that, just as one of the jobs of the mayor is to sign and authenticate contracts. And once again, if you don't have minutes in front of you, you don't know what amendments have been made to the contracts, and the same problem exists with the staff, with the council, and with the public. Not having a written list of minutes, not having written minutes with a list of the motions, who makes the motion, who seconds it, and who votes on it. It makes doing business very difficult. There's a reason why we're the only city in the state to do this, and that's because it's unworkable. If we are going to do the minutes by video, then there's no point in council validating it, because the video is what the video is. If the clerk has reviewed that and seen that the video is appropriate, then she certifies that. There's no point in us approving it. If she decides it's not correct, then I assume that she would type up minutes and bring it to us, which would then come for our certification. But the process that we have now, I think pretty clearly is unworkable.
We do have the journal, and I used to attach that. This seems so loud tonight. I used to attach that to it, and we stopped doing that. We had the journal that has the motion and the votes and who voted yes and no, and we could start doing that again if you'd like.
I'm aware that we did the journal, and we had some meetings that it was on, we had some meetings that it wasn't on. Part of the problem is the few meetings I went to look at the journal was missing motions. Some of the motions that it had on weren't the actual motion that was made, and the votes were incorrect. And part of the reason that happens is because you're human, but we don't have a process for double-checking what happens. When we have regular minutes, you draft up the minutes, it's submitted to the council. All the council people check the minutes to make sure that what's drafted is accurate. With a process of having a video with a separate written journal, and the journal doesn't come in front of the council, and it's not part of the process that the council approves, then there's really no checking on that. And so we have a situation right now where we have posted on the website some things that are called journals that are under the tag of minutes that don't actually match with the, and once again, I'm not surprised that that happens because everybody here is human. The problem is when we create a process that keeps the checks from happening, then we get in those situations. And it's pretty important that we have an accurate written record of what the votes are, what the motions are, and how the meeting goes.
Do we have additional comment? We're going to need to get a motion in a second. We can have comment after the second, too. So, but if there's additional questions or issues. Jerry?
I've thought a little bit about this as well. If we could just have the summary of the vote and along that line, is it possible to add in on that summary the location of where a particular discussion took place or starts to take place?
You mean on the video?
To the video, but put it into the summary?
Anything's possible.
Anything's possible. Okay, cool.
But
Councilmember Cole.
I think that's mighty time-consuming to do that. I would like to have just clear statement, or just clear record of the actions and the votes and so forth, which is close to the journal, but maybe a little, I'm not totally sure, might need to be a little more, but essentially action minutes. And that's easy, right?
Action minutes, yes,
But I think,
which is what the journal is right now.
yeah, I think that issue is separate from this issue, because we're not going to, well, I guess we could theoretically change what we approve for tonight, but I would think we should, yes or no, approve this for tonight, and then have a motion to proceed differently if that's what we want to do.
Well, I'm going to make a motion in a minute, but if we are keeping a written set of essentially minutes that we call a journal, then that's what we should be approving, not certifying that the video exists. Because the video either exists or it doesn't exist. We don't need to certify that the video exists, and it makes no sense for us to certify the video and then ignore the written minutes or the journal or whatever it is that we want to call them, because that's the document that we actually should be making sure is correct. So I move that the staff prepare an ordinance for first reading to remove the definition of minutes from section 1-3-2 of the city code and to produce written minutes for the council meetings.
Do we have a second?
So is that sort of in keeping what, Wendy, with what you were saying? This is more, his motion is more complete, is more,
Eliminates.
What's it again? You said something, can't hear you.
The motion eliminates video minutes and moves us back to written minutes.
Yes.
Prepare an ordinance to such.
Well, you're keeping a journal anyway, that's your
This time, we don't have a second, so moving on.
Okay.
I think we have to, I want to add my little place on this. Several issues. We have a legal way of doing it with the video, so that shouldn't be a question. It's legal, and it meets the expectations of the state as far as the maintaining of records. The question is, does it solve our needs as a council? Do we have what we need as a council and as we feel we should have it to represent it to the citizens? I think that is a discussion item. I'd like to not do that at this point. I'd like to move ahead with an action on these minutes, but I would like to concur that at some point here, we have an opportunity to look at this in more detail, because I think there were some things left hanging, and I also have a concern that we need to reach some closure on that issue, so.
so you're just saying at some point to do that. I would be wanting us to do that as soon as a study session agenda would accommodate that.
Can we move past this, and maybe during general business, can I bring it back up and just see, we'll have a chance to think about it? Sure. I think that's an item worth discussing briefly tonight. So we have,
Move to approve based on the city clerk's certification, the December 15 video as the minutes for the December 15, 2015 regular meeting of the city council.
Second.
we have a motion and a second. Are you prepared to vote?
The vote is 6 in favor, with Councilmember Clark voting no. The motion carries 6-1.
That moves us past the consent agenda to agenda item number 6, which is ordinances for second reading and public hearing. Tonight, we have one item, item A. That is ordinance number 112 on second reading to approve the designation of 5736 South Bemis Street as a historical landmark. Senior Planner Dennis Swaim, can you provide your staff report? Oh, Jocelyn will be replacing Mr. Swaim, if you'd introduce yourself.
Good evening, Mayor and Council, and yes, Jocelyn Mills presenting on behalf of Community Development tonight this application. The proposal in front of you is for a designation for historic landmark. The owner, Paula Quinney, and her family are bringing this application before you. And please keep in mind that relative to the nomination, the things that you look at are age, that the building represents a character of a built environment of that era, as well as integrity of the building. Here is a photo of, in our archives at the city and at the museum. This was the earliest photo we could find. However, relative to who lived in it, we found from 1930, the Betchel family lived there. Then I just want to quickly go through some pictures. This is the property prior to the house being renovated. Here's the rear of the house. Now this is after the renovation. The side, the front porch, and now the front looking straight on. As you can see, a lot of work was put into the project. Then quickly for your background, here's just an overview of some other residential landmarks within the city. Just quickly go through that to give you some perspective. And again, here's the Quinney House, circa 1908, and this is the designation that's being proposed this evening. At Historic Preservation Board on November 16th, they recommended that the City Council designate the Quinney House as a historic landmark. Sorry, I didn't realize that was. So when you consider the application tonight, it's about how old it is. It's 107 years old. And then the property must meet one of 15 criteria. And the Historic Preservation Board found that it met 5, which are listed there for you. Oops, 5. And with that, staff is recommending approval to designate the Quinney House as a historic landmark. With that, I'll take any questions.
Does council have any questions for Director Mills? Councilmember Cernanek.
Director Mills, could you just quickly give us a highlight of some of the implications of having a residence declared as landmark status?
Sure. So in the local designation, it's really about the age that it's representing. It's 107 years old, so it is representing a portion of our city's history in that era when it was built, as well as the integrity of the house. As you can see, they did a fantastic job.
The implications of the landmark status is that the facade will maintain its integrity over time.
Yes, maintain its integrity over time, and this is a permanent designation request to ensure that it does both maintain that integrity as well as continue to represent that era, so meaning that it'll be in good upkeep and basically look like that.
And then in the process, the actual property owners are coming forth with this application as well?
Yes, Paula Quinney on behalf of her family, yes.
Thank you.
Additional questions? This is a public hearing.
You have one?
Oh, I'm sorry, Doug, didn't see.
So you said the owner has, do you have a written document from her or something or did she make the application herself?
Yes, she did.
Okay.
Yes.
Additional questions? This is a public hearing. There should be a sign-in sheet up at the top if anyone wished to speak, and I know we do have the one person who wants to do that.
First.
Oh, let's hear from the owner first. Okay, we're happy to hear from you.
Hi. So I have a couple things. My daughter and my son couldn't be here, but she wanted to say something, so she recorded it. Can I try and make it so you can
Absolutely.
hear it?
Absolutely.
I live at 8219 West Phillips Ave in Littleton, Colorado. Sorry I couldn't be there in person, but I wanted to take a minute to talk about my dad, James Quinney, the man who restored this home. Dad was a craftsman who spent a large part of his life restoring old homes. When I was growing up in New Hampshire, he worked on homes dating back to the late 1700s, bringing them back to their glory. He loved this work and was serious about it, always learning about the homes he worked on and sharing their history around the dinner table. He loved that history, and he made sure to preserve it through his work. The house on Bemis Street was no exception. Man, was it an eyesore when they bought it, but he could see through the Smurf blue facade and horrible carpet. He and my mom had a vision that I admire. So they took on the project and got to work, and with the help of friends and family, they brought this home back to its prime. My dad passed away last spring after a long year of battling cancer and working tirelessly to finish this house. I know this home deserves to be on the historical register for all the reasons that I'm sure Dennis mentioned, so I won't rehash them. But I want it to be there for so many more reasons. First and foremost, because this was my dad's passion, one that culminated in this home, and one that he passed on to his children, friends, family, and anyone willing to learn. I'm sure he's smiling down on us just for trying, but man, would he do somersaults if it was accepted. Thank you so much for considering this. It means the world to our family.
So that was hers, and I'll try to get through mine. So I wanted to share a story about Jim.
Paula, could you put the mic?
Sorry.
Thank you, there you go.
I wanted to share a story about Jim and how he touched people with the passion of restoring old homes and bringing our community together. I've been attending a grief meeting since September and was talking with another girl at the meeting a few weeks ago. She asked me where I lived because she works in Littleton. When I started to explain, she looked at me and she said, "You live in that blue house, bright blue house. Oh my gosh, I worked in the office across the street from you. I watched your husband from my office window working on that house every day and saw the love and passion he put into it." I looked at her with smiling eyes and said, "You knew my husband?" She said, "I never spoke to your husband, but I knew him well. And if you walked down Bemis Street those months that Jim was restoring our home, there's a good chance you experienced the same thing. Jim loved restoring this house. He loved the history of old homes, and he was an amazing and talented craftsman. Jim wanted this home to be a legacy to the history of Littleton, and our family would really love it if this could stand as a legacy to Jim also. Thank you for listening to this story and considering the designation of 5736 South Bemis Street as a landmark to the city of Littleton."
Thank you very much, Paula.
You're welcome. Do you have any questions?
We have no questions. Okay, now we'll open the public hearing at 7:03. I have a roster with two people who would like to speak. The first one is Jeannie Erickson. And Jeannie, our clock failed to work today, so we'll have the clerk keep track of the time for you.
Hello, my name is Jeannie Erickson. I live in District 1. I'm here tonight to give my full support regarding the designation of the house at 5736 South Bemis as a historic landmark of Littleton. The information sheet I handed out shows that Littleton has designated 27 structures as historic landmarks between 1973 and 2009. In those 36 years, 4 of them were in 1973. Then there was a 20-year gap with nothing. I don't know what happened there. And the next designations were in 1993, 2 structures, 2 in 94, 1 in 95 and 97, 2 in 98, 1 in 99, 2000, 2001, 3 in 2002, 2 in 2003, 1 in 2004, 5, 6, 7, and 1 in 2009. I'm reading these to you because I think 27 is a pretty low number for 36 years of designations. This will be the first designation in 7 years. I believe it is the responsibility of City Council to protect the historic places in the city of Littleton. I hope that you will advise the Littleton Historic Preservation Board to make it their #1 priority to continue on with the mission of preserving the history of what makes Littleton what it is today. What makes people stay in Littleton and what makes others want to come to Littleton. People enjoy coming to Littleton because of its small town feel, which includes our historic buildings and homes which need to be preserved for future generations. I hope that the City Council and city staff realize that zoning laws for Littleton were put in place for a reason, to preserve neighborhoods, and that throwing the zoning laws out the window or skirting around them so that they can build anything wherever they want is not a good thing for the citizens or the character of Littleton. I'd like to leave you with a quote regarding historic preservation. When we build, let us think that we build forever. Let it not be for present delight, nor present use alone. Let it be such work as our descendants will thank us for. And let us think as we lay stone on stone that a time is to come when those stones will be held sacred, because our hands have touched them, and that men will say, as they look upon the labor and wrought substance of them, see, this our Father did for us. John Ruskin. What a city chooses to save is what a city chooses to say about itself. I urge you to vote yes on this historic designation. Thank you.
Thank you. Pam Chadbourne.
I'm Pam Chadbourne. I live in District 1. I also urge you to make this house a historic landmark in Littleton. And Jeannie said a lot of good things, so I'll agree with them all. And what I wanted to add is that I profoundly thank the Quinney family. And I'm going to tell you that this is the essence of Littleton, not what is happening across the street from this house. This is what Littleton means to most of us here. And that is a message that the council and staff of the city need to get. I don't want to put those words in the Quinney's mouth, though. Those are coming from me to you. But it in no way diminishes my thanks to the family for this contribution to the city. This is the heart of Littleton, literally and in meaning. So please recognize this gift. And as Jeannie said, I look forward to you urging all parts of the city to look at preserving our historic heritage more strongly than we have in the past. Thank you.
Thank you. Those are all the speakers that we have signed up. And seeing no one else, I will close the hearing at 7:09. Council, do you have any questions? Can I have a motion to approve ordinance 112 on second reading to approve the designation of 5736 South Bemis Street as a historical landmark?
I
So
move to
moved.
approve on second reading the ordinance designating, 5736 South Bemis Street as an historic landmark.
Second.
Do we have any further discussion?
Well, I would like to comment. I had the privilege of meeting Mr. Quinney when he was working on this. His attention to detail in the parts that he worked on restoring it was unbelievable. And this is a marvelous, marvelous place. So, thank you.
Any further comments? Bill?
Well, I'd like to thank the McQuinneys too, and it's a marvelous restoration. This is, I think it bears saying also that designation as an historic landmark gives some financial benefit as well, and a right to grants and potential grants down the road is that moves forward. More importantly, those of us who campaigned recently and have in the past, that's one of the most common things that we hear is that people want to maintain the small town feel. This is the way you do it. And Littleton has a special core that is exemplified by these historic places, and it really is a cultural and societal benefit to all of us, but it also has a tremendous benefit for the community at large when it comes to finance. Several people testified in the public hearing about the lack of additional designations in the last several years, but we've had some 40 buildings on Main Street, of which 25 or 30, and Margie, you may know the number, but most of Main Street is now an historic district, and as that grows, the more it grows, the more financial clout we have. Taxes increased in the first 6 years of that historic district by 70% compared to a citywide average of 16. So this is not just about bricks and mortar. It's about real benefits to the community and the beauty that it brings. So thank you for doing all of that.
Any additional comments? I would also like to thank the Historic Preservation Board for the effort that they've made and their willingness to work with folks to do the minute detail that is required of the ordinance to check the buildings out and make sure that they adequately reflect a historical position, and that's not something that comes easy, and I know at times requires some tact and some diplomacy to talk things through as to what a historical context would be versus what a modernization would be on the facade of a building. So it's not just a simple rubber stamp. It's a real thought process, it's a passion, it takes some real work. So thank you to the HPB board, appreciate that too. And of course, thank you, Paul. I think you did a great job presenting it tonight, and I'm sure that anyone who's aware of this is very proud of it. Do we have a vote? You ready to vote?
Now it's not working at all. The vote is 7-0. The motion carries unanimously.
Sorry for the loss of your husband.
This brings us to item 7, general business, and we added a first item A to it, and that's to discuss the entire issue of minutes. So since we just placed it on the agenda, it's new, and perhaps we didn't get a chance to plan for the discussion, I would like to have some discussion, and I'm looking for perhaps an outcome ultimately of referring it to get some kind of point of view back from staff of any issues that perhaps are raised tonight, because as I said, we haven't had a chance to research this strongly, and I think staff should have the opportunity to research it also, but I'd like to open the discussion. And I'll open it by saying, or City Manager, go ahead.
Mayor, if I may, I think, so there's two documents which occur. One is the video minutes, which is the official minutes. It is accurate in the sense that it is a video of people, it's their body language, it's the full discussion, it's not minutes. You can't get any more comprehensive than that. That is what council has chosen under state statute requirement for the minutes. Then our charter requires what we call the journal. And that journal is, as you heard described earlier, the document which identifies it's essentially the action minutes might be a more common terminology for it. And again, I guess I would go back to a little bit of the disconnect on the administration side, and it's one of the reasons we're updating the website, is to be consistent around where those are, what they are called. The current software calls them minutes, and that's a template that we have to live with, so it is confusing in that sense. That is being modified and changed for the new website that will be in there. If the desire, and the reason we have asked the council to certify the video is the formal record to say that the council is approving their minutes. And yes, it has already been reviewed by the city clerk, and we're asking you to take that additional action to go ahead and approve that certification through the clerk. The journal, again, does not require council approval. We can certainly give it to you. You can approve it if you want, but it is a document required by the charter and is done every 2 weeks as the council has their regular meetings. And we can provide that to you. We will be getting it more consistent, its location on the website. So just to be clear on those two documents that are out there. We're continuing to look at software that does the voice to text, gets you quicker into the location of trying to find different things that are in there. It's currently by agenda item. But it is certainly less time-consuming. It is more accurate in the sense that it is a direct recording of what I am saying right now. We have not, other than the few folks that have come down over I don't know how long we've been doing it this way, we are not receiving additional concerns from folks, whether they are looking for them or not. I don't know. We don't get many hits on the website for that particular location. It's not one of the heated hotspots.
I've had a couple of discussions particularly during the election, regarding the minutes, and we had vigorous discussion regarding the minutes and when we made the shift to the video minutes. I think for me, what's more important than anything about the minutes is not only that there is an availability to the community for the minutes, which is not only mandated, but is something that we do, and but it's also about the accuracy. And before we were doing video minutes, we had large, depending on the size of the meeting, packet. At that time, mostly paperless, or we were doing paper, and we would read through it, and whenever we had a comment about it or a question or wanted to clarify something, the answer was always, well, I need to go back and look at the video for that. And there were a number of times that the clerk was using her best judgment on what was the intention and what was being said. And so in some ways, the minutes were recorded somewhat subjectively. So I think that the accuracy, the authenticity, the ability to see the entire dynamics in the room, to hear the expression and the people that are speaking, to be able to see the people that come down. The video minutes actually include the public. The written minutes were very, very minimal in that inclusion. So I think the video minutes, as long as, we don't have the issues with sound and stuff like that, which we've been continually working on improvements, are the most accurate. And I think that is a very, very important thing for us to be conscious of. And the other thing is that I do like the journal, and I think that that is something I would like to see tagged back into the minutes so that the public can easily access that. That seems to be where most of the need for information is. And being able to find the stuff online people are getting more and more adept to doing that. YouTube, running through things, finding the place, bookmarkers and stuff. So I think it's something new, but everything that was once new becomes old. And so I think that the current process is appropriate. I am not in favor of changing the current process, except for the being a little bit more aggressive about getting the journal not only to council but online. Thank you.
Additional comments? Peggy?
So I don't see it as an either or. I think the videos are really important, but I think action minutes are the most useful as a record of actions taken. I have frequently gone back and watched the videos, but I also frequently have had difficulty trying to find what the devil I was looking for in part of a very long agenda item, because sometimes our particular agenda items have considerable public testimony or council talk or whatever. So I see it, both of these, as valuable, and the action minutes as a little more helpful than what I see as the journal.
Councilmember Hopping.
I would opt on the side of continued video. I think there is a point to be made for the journal if people like to have a clear index of who voted for what, and who made the motion or second, if that's a clarifying mechanism. But any history teacher will tell you that a primary record is more accurate and meaningful than a secondary record. When you make written minutes, it calls for the clerk to interpret what has been said, and then it calls for the reader to interpret what the clerk has written. So you've got two interpretations instead of actual fact. It leaves it wide open to be misconstrued, and we wouldn't want that to happen. We have to have accuracy in these written minutes. Don't provide that. If Paula just presented some very powerful testimony, I thought, and had she done that in writing, or if that had been a written minute, would have said, Paula came up and talked about how much the house meant to her and how her husband had lovingly restored it, and she wanted to have it designated. End of story. Now we have a permanent record of what that really meant and what the power is to Littleton to have that done. So written minutes are archaic. We're not going to have those much longer in this world. We'll have capsulization, but the video should be the record. And if we want to have a summary in writing, we can do that. But we have to have one go-to source in case of a difference. So that needs to be the video.
Mayor, why don't we send out, we can have the clerk send out, as an example, tonight's journal, because again, it's required by charter. We can send it out and just receive some input on, to Councilmember Cole's comment. Is there, does it have enough detail in who made the motion, amendments, the votes, and that type of thing to solidify the concerns that have been identified here, acknowledging video minutes, but having that kind of short synopsis that's there. And then if council wants to approve that as a component of the approval and certification of the minutes, which by ordinance are the video, or is the video, excuse me, to Councilmember Brinkman and Councilmember Clark's comment earlier, we can certainly bring that in as well. I do think we believe that there is value in having you approve the certification of the clerk's video minutes.
Councilmember Cernanek.
Yes. For our future discussion, once we take a look at the sample, could we include with that an estimated time as to when transcription, automated transcription I'm talking about, might be available?
We can try.
Yeah.
Would you clarify what you're meaning, the transcription?
At the moment now, you can put your own notes on your smartphone, and those can be transcribed for you through services.
Okay.
And it would be the ability to have some of that so that if folks are indeed looking for that, it at least can be made available electronically. I'm not looking to propagate paper on this, but recognizing there are some foibles within that, but if folks are looking for the proverbial electronic word as opposed to the spoken word, maybe that would be something we could consider. It'll have a cost, I'm sure.
Additional comments? Councilmember Cole, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so I have another issue to bring up in conjunction with this. I've had more than one person speak to me about a desire for closed captioning on the videos. Someone approached me in the grocery store the other day requesting this. A very, very nice man who's had a cochlear implant, but still has great difficulty hearing. And so he's one of several people that have requested the closed captioning. So I think if we're looking at this, we may look at that, the cost, and so forth.
Councilmember Clark.
Yes. I think we're doing a little bit of a straw man and a little bit of confusion here. I don't think anybody is arguing to not have videos of the meetings. And I don't think anybody is arguing the value of having videos for the meetings. Having a video is always going to give you more information than the minutes do. However, the minutes, we need the minutes to give us a written record of how the council votes and what the motions are that are actually passed. We need that to be searchable, which it is if it's written. It's not searchable now as a video. If we're trying to go back and find out what the council actually voted and what it did, you sometimes have to spend hours going through the videos to find out which meeting that action took place in and where in the meeting that took place. Robert's Rules calls minutes a journal. I believe the word is probably an archaic word that came from when the charter was made in 59, when we did our charter. And actually, the journal is the official record of the actions taken in the meeting. We can't override that, although we have tried to with an ordinance. So I think the proper course of action, the one I would suggest, is that we make the journal or the action minutes, or whatever term you want to make it, the minutes that we actually approve, and that the council checks that, and in the process of approving that, the council decides that the written record matches what actually took place. And there may be times when you have to go back and refer to the video to make sure that that's correct. I think we should also keep the video as a record of what the meetings are in addition. But we have had multiple instances where we don't know and the staff doesn't know what the council actually decided. And you can't know that unless you can go back and look at the motion and see what the votes are. And your choices are to go back and listen through sometimes hours of meetings or to have a written record. So my recommendation is that we make the journal, call it a journal, call it the written minutes, but we also save the video to go along with that for the meetings.
Just a point of clarification, aside from the fact that the journal, that the clerk hasn't been attaching the journal over the last somewhat period of time, that's exactly what we have been doing. We have the journal mandated by charter. We have the video, which we approve. So we're really doing it. It's just that the journal dropped off the webpage at one point.
Yeah, so yes, every council meeting has a journal. The difference would be Councilmember Clark is recommending or proposing that, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the council approves the journal as the minutes, and we just, as a matter of policy or practice, have the video attached to that particular meeting. But what we would actually be bringing you and asking you to approve would be the journal pursuant to the charter definition and using the word journal in that place, which is certainly an easy thing to do. We would probably recommend that we have both of them on there and that you certify and approve the minutes, again, so that they're tied together as part of your approval process. But yes, it is required by the charter, the journal, and every council meeting has it. We have not been as good through that website, as I said earlier, because it uses words like minutes, which are not the minutes that most people are used to. So how about we come back for the next meeting, it's the 5th, so that would be 14 days, the 19th, and we have the journal and the minutes for that in the packet, and have you guys approve that and see if that works.
For tonight's meeting.
For tonight's meeting, as an example, so you guys can see if you like that. That sound good?
Yep.
I think that gets us toward a conclusion.
It's close. The journal officially says the yeas and nays of the motions, resolutions, and ordinances. I think we need to include some other information in that written record to make it more useful. I think we need to include who on the council is at the meeting, or whichever board it happens to be. I think we need to know the number, because there are some motions that depend on a specific number of votes to pass. And so I think you need to know at that point in the meeting how many people there are in the council. So I would recommend that the journal contain basically the roster, or you call the roll at the beginning. If council people leave, that's noted in there, or if council people arrive, that's noted in there, that it contains who makes the motion and who seconds the motion. I would prefer that it list who comes down from the public and speaks. I don't think that you need to summarize what they speak, but it'd be nice to have a sentence, but I think you at least have a name on there. But I could live without the names of the public coming down, but I think we need to have the time the meeting starts, the time the meeting ends, who's at the meeting, what the motions are, who makes the motion, and who seconds the motion. And I think that needs to come to the council in written form, and I think that is the form we need to approve, because otherwise we won't look at it to check and make sure that it's done, and it's too easy to make a mistake, even if you're very, very good.
That's what we recommended, and all of that, absent the public piece, is already in the journal. So we will bring it to you in 2 weeks for your review and approval and comments on whether we have met your desire and intent.
I'm not hearing any members of council saying that they're not satisfied with that response. And I think what Councilmember Clark has mentioned, I want to say it in a different way, but I really believe, just as a historian, when you're trying to go back and figure out the history of that night, those are the questions that you're going to ask when you look to try to figure something out. And I think we're getting to that point with the answer that you have. So.
I just want to be clear about this. We have been doing this. This is not something new. Okay.
Okay, I don't hear any further discussion on that. Okay, it's time for the second opportunity for the public. And again, just to explain, the reason that we broke these into two, and tonight's not a great example of it, but we do have many nights where folks come to the meeting for the purpose of the actual business, and they're here for an official purpose, and we want to try to facilitate that for them. And that includes the public that wants to be there for the hearing, or the public that might not otherwise get a chance to say something before an item comes up on the consent agenda because they have an issue and they want to be able to do it. So tonight's not a great example of it because we've only had a limited number of speakers tonight and we're moving right along, but that's the idea. And again, the same rules apply as on the initial one, and I just want to summarize that again, that we're doing it off the green sheet that folks would have signed, so hopefully you've signed to speak at the second session. And again, I just want to remind you that we're trying real hard to be civil and professional in our presentations here tonight, so disrespectful behavior would not be tolerated. And we're asking for 3 minutes tonight. The clock somehow is broken underneath me, I think, down in that switch, and our clerk will keep track of that. I have 4 people who would like to speak. Kim Buckley.
Egley.
Kim, I think I said your name wrong. If you'd say your name correctly.
I'm Kim Buckler, owner and resident in District 4 since 1994. I'm here in regard to city employee misconduct of Linda Suttle, Hal Mandler, and Hank Carter. A 2006
Could I
study...
just interrupt you for a moment? It's problematic when we begin to talk about an employee who's not here or doesn't have the opportunity to defend themselves unless it's been through a process with a manager or appropriate management. Has this come to management before? Kim, has anyone responded to you from the city on this matter before it comes to council? I like to leave the running of the city operations and the employees to the manager.
I'd like to finish my statement. So,
Okay, I will
a
interrupt you if
2006 study had shown an internal
I
problem.
will interrupt you if it becomes
Okay,
some kind of
absolutely.
character assassination, okay?
Sure. A 2006 study had shown internal problems with the Littleton Police Department, including shaky leadership and a high turnover rate. Former police chief Gary Moss retired immediately after the results of the study became public. Events in 2012 regarding Chiefs Coogan, Christensen, and Brandt led to their leaving and taking advantage of, in 2013, in exchange for retiring, their health insurance would be paid until 65. At that time, the criminal investigations were hindered by Gene Inley. This is all public record. The culture at the Littleton Police Department has a long history of misconduct with several bad apples still present in the department. First, I would like an explanation why 2 letters from 2013 went unanswered. Second, in my complaint of misconduct, has any record made it into the personnel folders of Linda Suttle, Hal Mandler, and Hank Carter? Third, since 1 letter was addressed to Gene Inley, did he again hinder the investigation? Their actions are clear violations of the City of Littleton's standards of conduct and policy and their position of trust, and they should be reprimanded.
Thank you, and if I could have this information go to the clerk and the city manager who's maybe not aware of it.
There you go.
Tim Dione?
Oh,
Tom Dione, I'm sorry.
Mayor, before we go on, are your letters delineating what you consider to be the inappropriate conduct? Okay. Can you distribute those letters to the council people? Which means I'll come down and pick up a printed copy. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Tom Dione.
Tom Dion of District 3. As a home rule community, I'm asking council members to consider clarifying a parking violation, Article 12, which deals, a subtitle of parking is vehicle idling. After living at the District 3 for 8 years, I received a citation in my driveway because my vehicle was idling and I wasn't there. This never happened before. I lived in Littleton just short of 15 years in other areas. I was a little bit stunned. I went down to speak to the officer's supervisor. The officer supervisor told me 1206 is because they're trying to cut back on vehicle theft, when in fact, it has nothing to do with vehicle theft. This originated from Colorado House Bill 11-1275, which is reference 3 that we handed out to you. I'm not going to get into all the details of that. It's just basically coming up with a statewide vehicle idling standard. That's what this House bill was all about, and it became effective July 1st, 2011. And since then, there's been a few revisions. Reference 1 and reference 2, side by side, it has a lot to do with pollution. As you know, it's been modeled after Denver. Denver has unique problems. They have a lot of older vehicles that pump out a lot of pollution when they idle. unattended motor vehicle, 1206. Now, if you notice reference 2, some communities have added to this ordinance or have subtracted from the model Denver. You have Aspen, Basalt, Denver, Johnstown, Greenwood Village. Littleton is not mentioned here. And I'm asking the city council members to consider a clarification of this rule. I was told by the officer's supervisor that we're no longer allowed to warm up our vehicles in the winter unattended. And it's taken my neighbors by surprise. A lady across the street has 2 young sons, been doing it for years. They lived there 4 years before me. People come out of churches and they have remote starts. And they start their vehicles before they come out. 1, they're elderly and they have to keep warm, or 2, they have children that they want it warmed up before they come out. This citation was 11/13. It was 22 degrees all night long, and this is the first time I went out to start my vehicle. The officer happened to be in the area at the time. I was kind of confused. How did he know my vehicle was on? I'm still a little bit skeptical of that.
Tom, can you begin to wrap up? You're out of time. If you'd wrap up.
That's basically it.
Thank you, sir. Pam Chadburn.
Can I have the light for projection, please? First of all, I would like to say that written minutes need to come back, and Councilmember Clark, I would like you to regard who in the public speaks as important. It's not that much time to add. It just simply cannot be a burden for staff to put in the names of people who come down to speak. And so that should be in the written minutes. My New Year comments to you are about loss of historic value, quality of life, and respect for law in the city. Misfeasance for your consideration and expectations for 2016 actions. I want to mark the major and permanent loss that the city has endured this past couple weeks. The IREA headquarters building was destroyed on December 24th, 2015. It's across from the courthouse and above, quote, quote, historic, downtown Littleton. And I'll let the video record show my air quotes and my tone of voice about historic. Incorporation of the IREA headquarters into redevelopment on the site would have preserved values and respected the law. It would have complied with our zoning code, setbacks, open space, compatibility with the neighborhood, site requirements for traffic and pedestrian safety, etc. And it would have preserved the historic quality of downtown Littleton. Yet the failure of the city council to act to enforce our city code allowed the loss of that building, and I'm going to point out, it did not preserve property rights. It violated the property rights of all of us who live here and rent here and visit here for work, because the code protects our rights. All of our rights, not just some people's rights. And let me point out the land use table that was in effect when the property owner bought the property. Single-family homes are the only permitted use in R3. And in B2, multifamily residences and apartments were not and are not permitted. They are not a use by right. Yet council failed to speak up for that. So I want to mourn and grieve the loss of that building. I think that is a permanent destructive impact on the city. So now let me talk about conduct of municipal authorities. I have a wiki definition, which I'll pass out in a little bit, about misfeasance, nonfeasance, and malfeasance. I'm not speaking as a lawyer. My comment is, if I were up there where you are, or on staff, I would be concerned about this. So consider your conduct. I'm not telling you it's wrong, but I'm saying when I read this, boy, I would be worried. And finally, I have some actions for council for 2016. I could be nice and say I urge you or want you or request.
Pam, you need to wrap up. Your time is up.
Okay, so I would like you to study and implement waste treatment improvements. Grand Junction has a great example of treating waste so that the energy is used. And you should study and implement requirements for affordable housing in Littleton. And I'll send you copies of this so that you can get more details.
Thank you, Pam. Do we have anyone else? I don't have anybody else signed up for the second time. Kent Bagley.
Am I not on your list?
You are, sir. I am sorry. Yes,
Yeah, I was number 3.
you're on my list.
Mayor, members of the council, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you this evening. I am returning to the council. We had a board meeting that started at 5:30 tonight, and so I figured I'd come down. I didn't think that I'd be here at 7:45, but that's okay. My purpose is twofold. Number one is to give you a little bit of an update for 2016 about the RTD Fast Tracks program. We will be opening 5 corridors during 2016. The first one really is occurring right now, and that's the bus rapid transit to Boulder on US 36. On the 22nd of April, the commuter rail to the airport from Denver Union Station will commence. Top speed at about 80 miles an hour, 6 stops, 37 minutes to the airport from downtown, and the total fare will be $9. If you're a senior, disabled, a student from 5 to 19, it'll be half of that price. So that will occur on, actually it'll be the 23rd because the 22nd will be free. The other lines that will open next year are the B line, which is to South Westminster at Pecos and roughly 48th. The other corridor will be, another corridor will be the G line out to Arvada, Old Town Arvada, and also the light rail line that'll be completed along I-225. So that'll be the 5 corridors that'll be opening up next year. As you know, I am the representative. This is the last year of my second 4-year term. So there will be somebody following me next year. I hope sometime during this year to be able to offer a tour to a number of the jurisdictions which I represent, which includes Highlands Ranch, Littleton, of course, Cherry Hills Village, Greenwood Village, and Centennial, as well as Highlands Ranch, as I mentioned, and see if we can do something with a free trip out to the airport and back. The other thing I wanted to mention, there is a big article in the newspaper about your smoking ordinance, and I want to thank Councilwoman Brinkman for bringing that forward. The thing I want to mention is I think that you need to expand the area that's covered to include the Littleton Light Rail Station and also the Mineral Light Rail Station, but specifically the Littleton Downtown Station. I get frequent comments and issues with smoking of not just cigarettes, but marijuana at the Littleton Downtown Light Rail Station. That is your window and door to the world. It's important that that be customer friendly and not just for smokers. The amount of maintenance issues that are required to remove cigarette butts are significant. So I wanted to mention those 2 things to you, and I appreciate the opportunity to come and speak to you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken.
Can I ask a question? Ken, so at the, right where you board the RTD, not the lots, but where you board, that's city property too? That's not your property?
That property is part of the right-of-way for the Burlington Northern and Santa Fe and also the Union Pacific Railroad. So we're in the right-of-way. We don't own it, we manage and manage the station that's there, all the improvements that are there, and I know if there is an ordinance, as there is in the city of Littleton, that restricts smoking, then we have the ability to enforce similar to the way that you do.
So we do need to act for you all to...
Yes,
okay.
I think
I mean,
that's a real important
And
consideration.
I appreciate what you're saying, because I ride quite often, so thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
I have a question. Can RDT just have their own little ordinance that says no smoking on our platforms?
No, we do not.
But you could?
We could.
Okay,
But it would be in concert with the city of Littleton and the ordinance that they would establish, that you've established downtown. If that included the light rail station, then that would be something that we would have the ability to assist in enforcing.
Thank you.
That's my understanding. I would have to get with our safety and security people to further understand the specifics of that.
All right, cool.
Okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ken. One more speaker.
Jeannie Erickson, District 1. I just wanted to bring up the fact that Mr. Bagley would not have had to wait at all if our comments would have been at the beginning, like they always have been in the past. He wouldn't have had to sit here until 7:50. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we get the opportunity for council and manager comments. City manager?
No report. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Well, let's start from Councilmember Hoppingside.
I have no report. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Councilmember Cernanek.
I have a spider here for our
He started
city
down
clerk.
here.
Couple of dates to share with council just to be aware of. One is I received notice from Commissioner Nancy Sharp with regard Building a Better Colorado. They had a summit session at the South Metro Denver Chamber, but there's also going to be another session that's going to be at the AMG building, Trust Bank building, on Thursday night of this week from 4 to 6 p.m. Again, they're covering issues with regard ballot initiatives, budget versus expectations, and third item that has to deal with transportation funding. So it'll be an interesting discussion for those that want to attend. And what they're looking to do is to gather information. And I think part of their intent is to look at some ballot components for this fall. So the second item is just to put an item out there for folks to have on their calendar if they don't. The South Metro Denver's Economic Forecast Breakfast is on the 15th, the morning. That's at the Marriott South, that's near Park Meadows. And the four speakers should be pretty interesting. The keynote speaker particularly is an individual where she has headed up a couple of consumer products businesses, and so it should be an interesting part with regard to taking a look at that. The DRCOG board meeting on the 20th of this month is focused on the 2040 Metro Vision Plan, and it has a slightly different structure to it than what has happened in the past, and they go from strategies through themes, outcomes, and performance measures. And so it's a little bit different format than the Metro Vision 2035 that's out there. And for those folks that are looking for the opportunity to take the DIA rail line, the DRCOG Annual Awards is going to be at the DIA Weston on the evening of April 27th. And so there's an opportunity to actually take the rail line out for the award celebration.
Councilmember Valdez.
Thank you. I received an email from Littleton resident, Mr. Terry Leiden, a District 4 resident, I believe. I've had the pleasure of knowing Terry Leiden for about 40 years. Mr. Leiden is a NCAA Division I college football ref. Terry Leiden earned and received the honor of being selected as referee for the upcoming Alabama-Clemson football game. Congratulations to Littleton resident Terry Leiden for your hard work. That's it.
Thank you. Councilmember Cole.
So, City Manager, following up on Mr. Bagley's observations, whatever we would need to do to bring us something to address the delightful smoking environment at the RTD stations, we can do that?
For council consideration, if there's a desire of council, absolutely.
And then a second request to council. Downtown parking issues are apparently significantly affecting some expansion and new location of some new businesses, as in they're not coming yet because of parking issues. They need parking. And so I would like us to, at the very least, do some brainstorming of things we could do interim or long-term at study session. I mean, not that we could do it at study session, but to discuss at study session.
And we will actually be, that's part of next week's study session, discussing the streetscape plans.
For the actual streetscape. So if we wanted a variation on the parking piece of that, we could bring it up then.
And you may not once you hear what we're planning.
Okay, thank you.
Just to clarify, on the smoking request to bring forward another ordinance or additional information, do I have council's interest in doing that for the light rail areas?
Yes.
I see a no. Okay, yes.
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 I'm actually a no. I don't think we have enough. We don't have the majority then at this point, if I'm reading that correctly.
Bill, you were what?
I'll say half and half. It depends on what it
Yeah,
says.
you don't get that. You don't get
You
it.
don't get that.
Three,
It's like
3.5 to
abstaining.
3.5.
Ties lose.
So I think, could I make observations? So there may be a variation on this. Once you get down on that platform, and depending on the time of day, there are not quite 4 million people, but it can be quite crowded. And you have to be there to get on the darn light rail. You could smoke up top in the parking lot in certain areas and get rid of your cigarette before you get down there. But when you get down there, you don't have too much option except to jump onto the tracks or something to get away from the smoke. So I wish people would consider that. I'm not big in favor of restricting people's rights, but there are many people who use the light rail who are handicapped. There are considerable number of people with the School for the Blind who have to ride the light rail as part of their learning experience and so forth. They can't necessarily see people smoking, but then suddenly the smoke is there in their faces. So maybe people would consider that there be some options that would keep freedom to smoke and also freedom to not have that right in your face down on the platform area.
So am I reading it correctly? We still don't have the interest in having council bring forward something at this time?
That really sounds like an RTD issue at the moment.
But he's saying we can't do it, that you can't do it unless we do something.
What I heard.
Is that what you said?
I think just, he would like to do something in concert with the city, not do something in exception to the city's policy. I think that's what RTD is looking for, as a partnership on something like that, but.
Well, whatever we need to do in concert, I thought he was saying we need to do something before they can do something, so whatever.
Councilmember Clark.
First of all, I think that was it Tom that came down about the puffer ordinance on the cars?
Yes, Tom.
I think that's something that we probably ought to look at. As what happens sometimes seems like not infrequently, the reason why a law is originally made becomes different on why it's enforced later on. Some technology has changed. As he points out, there's cars sold now with remote start features. And I'm assuming that it remote starts the car with the doors locked. So if you have the police going up and down the street and they're issuing tickets for cars that are running because they're going to be stolen, and in fact the car's locked or it has a remote start, that doesn't make any sense. But perhaps what's just as disturbing is the fact that the police leave their cars running with the doors unlocked and idling multiple times. I can think of 2 different instances where police cars were stolen that were running. So if we're going to ticket other people for leaving their cars running, then we need to stop the habit ourselves. So I would like to see this come back as a study session topic for us to reexamine our part in, I'm guessing it's probably in our own code for the puffing. Second issue is I had a neighbor ask a couple days ago on what the status is of the Walmart. And so I thought it'd be worthwhile to lay out what I think I know that's taking place. And that is there is a developer called Endeavor that has come to the city and submitted a sketch or a drawing, whichever term you choose to use, showing a Walmart and Sam's Club at the south end of the Enzer property. Enzer property is roughly between Santa Fe and the river, from Mineral down to almost Woolhurst. It shows a Walmart and Sam's Club at the south end with residential and a strip mall on the north end. That sketch has been seen by multiple people on the staff. The developer talked to the city manager and talked about moving residential from where it currently exists in the zoning up to the north end of the property. City manager has started a process to update the zoning code, and one of the issues in the update of the zoning code is to make administrative changes easier to PD plans that would allow things like the transfer of density or residential to go from one area to the other and not have a rezone hearing take place. City Council also passed a Santa Fe Urban Renewal Plan to provide incentives for developing the Enzer property. The Enzer property is the only area that's TIFed in the Santa Fe plan. The county assessor, Corbin Sackdahl, disallowed the inclusion of the Enzer property because it's agricultural into the Santa Fe Urban Renewal Plan. The city initiated a suit against them in district court, I believe in December of 2014. That's coming up for trial, I've heard, in January 22nd. But that's not the only hitch that exists with the Santa Fe plan. When the council originally passed the Santa Fe Urban Renewal Plan, they had property in the plan that did not exist in the city limits. It was outside the city limits. And they TIFed that property that was outside the city limits. There is a specific process called out in state law for including property outside of the city limits, or rather an unincorporated county, into a city's urban renewal plan, which was not followed. The Amendment 300 was an initiative passed by the citizens which requires a vote of the people to ratify any change to an urban renewal plan that deals with TIF, condemnation, eminent domain. The council came back and amended the Santa Fe plan, took out the property that was not in the city limits on March 17th, 2 weeks after Amendment 300 passed, and removed the property from the Santa Fe plan that had been TIFed. That requires a ratification of the citizens for that plan to be valid, which has never happened, and the council voted not to do a ratification. So we have a number of issues with the Santa Fe plan. Apparently the city is paying the full legal costs for suing the county to make sure that they can provide incentives to the developer of the Enzer property. At the December 10th LIFT meeting, LIFT is Littleton's Urban Renewal Authority, Jim Reese, Executive Director of LIFT, said that he has been working with 2 developers, one for the Enzer property and one for Columbine Square. The developer for the Enzer property, he said, was Endeavor, a company from Texas, Dallas, that he expects to bring back plans in 2016. And he said that he's not sure what the hitch is in the timing, but he thinks that they're waiting to see how the city and LIFT's suit against the county shakes out. So to summarize all of that is we have a developer that has come to the city to show a preliminary drawing of some sort, sketch or drawing, showing a Sam's Club and a Walmart on the south end of Enzer property with residential on the north end. He has asked to be able to move the residential as an administrative change.
So are you wrapping up? Because some of the things that you've said there are worthy of response.
Okay. Then I'll stop and you can respond.
So there is no application. We have not had any discussion with Endeavor in well over a year, maybe 18 months. We have not seen any map that shows the words Sam's or Walmart on it. I have used that example because around us, if you look at the massive development that has occurred around us, you're not going to see a Costco come to this community. You're not going to see a Target come to this community. You're not going to see a Kohl's come to this community. So they are examples that are there. There has been no conversation. There is no application that is currently here. There has been no conversation between myself and Endeavor related to urban renewal. We are not in the process of rezoning anything. The conversations about the land use code amendments are conversations that will just be started through there. And I very much don't appreciate the accusations that there are activities occurring which are not occurring. It is setting misinformation out into the community, which we continually then have to make arguments and defend against when there is no application that is in here. Ken Enzer owns the property and his family. We don't know if it's under contract with anybody. Nobody has talked to us about it. I can't speak to what Jim Reese has, what conversations he's had. I've not talked to him in months either. But I can tell the council that we are not negotiating or having any conversation with a potential developer. The land use allowed on the Enzer property is significant. It was done in 1984. It was an annexation agreement, which identifies, I believe, about 7 different parcels and has a full page of allowed uses in about a 6 font that are there. The heights range from about 35 feet in some residential areas up to 150 feet in the southern parcel of it. How a developer utilizes that by right development is anyone's guess that comes in. When you look at the drawings that were attached to that, it was what you would expect in 1984. It's all auto-oriented destination. It's large parcels that are there. The council agreed to that in 1984 as a trade for the mineral right-of-way, and we put the mineral through. At the time, County Line, C470 didn't exist. County Line was 2 lanes, and it clearly, we don't have video minutes, but clearly was intended to be the southern end, mall for the southwestern region of it. Nothing was built, and those allowable uses have continued over the years. There is we have no idea what could be built, but clearly it was designed for large format components. It's not a walkable map. I'm happy to show any of you what it looks like. But, the accusations that there are negotiations happening, that we've already committed to sharebacks or any of that is false because there is no application that's in here. We would be happy to talk to folks. Clearly that property will be developed at some point. And at the time, Councilmember Clark is correct, because I told him one of the early conversations with Endeavor was there's one parcel on it that does not allow residential. The majority of the parcels allow residential in what is currently a PDC. They wouldn't need any amendments for that. There is one parcel that, on the northern side of the land, that does not allow residential for whatever reason. I don't know what the thought process was. But given the fact that there is a light rail station there, it makes sense that somebody who would want to develop it would want to put additional density on the north side where the TOD is. We haven't heard from them. They walked away. I've probably met with at least 5 different development companies over the last 4 years who have come to the city and said, we're looking at this, et cetera, et cetera. And so if and when we get an application, council will be the first to know, and you ultimately will be making the decision about whether or not we want to partner with them in any fashion. And certainly, if they have to come through for a PD amendment, which I think council understands is equivalent in our code to a rezone, that opens up the conversation to have the debate amongst the council and ultimately with the public about what is an appropriate development out there. I can tell you from the staff's perspective, we do not think that 1984 land use layout matches what we want in 2015. It just isn't who we are as a community. It's not how we shop anymore. We've seen the lifestyle development of Aspen Grove come since then. We've seen other types of developments and evolutions in streets of South Glen. But the fact is that the council approved this as part of that annexation, and there is substantial allowable use by right on this parcel. And it's only if they come in some situation where we can kick that into essentially a PD amendment that it would come to you and we'd have an opportunity. The other opportunity is if they wanted above and beyond, then in terms of some kind of share back, then you have an opportunity to negotiate with them about what those uses are. So if and when we get an application, we'll have an opportunity to have that conversation with them. So, but there is no application, there is no conversation. It doesn't mean Endeavor won't buy it tomorrow. We don't have that information. But I can tell you there is no application and no conversation occurring between the City of Littleton and a purchaser of the Ensor property.
Mr. Mayor?
Okay, Councilmember Clark.
I'd like to clarify that nobody said that they had submitted an application. However, I think that we are parsing words to try and achieve a different take on what's actually happening. Luckily, the LIFT minutes or the LIFT meetings are videotaped just like our meetings are. Anybody can go back and look at them. And Jim Reese is having a conversation with Endeavor and told the board that he was having a conversation with Endeavor and that he expected them to come and submit a formal application in 2016, and that he understood that the timing or his understanding of why they were messing up or not doing that earlier was because they were waiting for the suit. I think the other clarification is after the council has passed the urban renewal plan, it then goes to LIFT to make the decision on whether to give any incentives or not. It does not come back to the city. And the whole way that the city chose and the council chose to structure the urban renewal plans by passing the plan before they had a specific project basically took the decision mechanism out of your hands. So what in fact has happened is the council has passed an urban renewal plan to provide incentives to the development of the Ensor property that they are defending in court, and the director of LIFT is having a conversation with a developer that's going to come in and develop the property. And I've been told that there was indeed a drawing that had a Sam's Club and Walmart on it, and that it was reviewed for, among other things, signalized placement on Santa Fe. So
I would be happy to contact Director Reese and follow up with the City Council.
okay, you might want to also actually look at the minutes, the video from the meeting, since there are no minutes.
So the comment that I want to make just on this is some of this is misunderstanding or on anyone's side in a discussion that's been going on for months. I really would like to get the city manager and Councilmember Clark together to talk about and get all those issues down so that they can be resolved one way or the other, or any other council member that has questions that they would like to take to the city manager on it. I was in his office yesterday and had most of my questions answered that I could remember at the time. And that's, I think, the way that we're going to get to the bottom of this is try to find what the true issues are and what the best understanding of it is. And I think it's incumbent on all of us to get to that point. Councilmember Clark, anything additional?
No.
Councilmember, or Mayor Pro Tem Brinkman.
Thank you. Well, we have coming up, I think in a couple of, maybe sometime in February, we're going to be continuing our discussion on our protocols and legislative rules. I would like to have a discussion about exactly what our council reports are. I feel, regardless of the subject, of the topic of the subject, it needs to be, we need to define what these reports are. I'm quite offended that it's being used to fan the flames of fear in the community, to propagate lies, to disseminate information that hasn't been proven and stating it as though it's factual. This is a public meeting. We are doing business here. We are on the record. And I think that we need to be very conscientious when we're having conversations that are as dynamic as this one can be, to do it at the end of the meeting, unprepared. Frankly, we won't do a study session on smoking regulations in the public right-of-way at the light rail stations, but this gets thrown out in council reports where we're supposed to be discussing the meetings we attended and what was said. I've been dealing with this issue for a number of months, thank you very much, and it is absolutely heartbreaking that this type of information is allowed to run through this community and scare people to death. There is not a Walmart that is being built on that property, and to continue to throw that Walmart word out to scare people is just doing such a disservice. So I guess my comment is I really would like to see us figure out what our comments in our report are supposed to be and how we're going to manage discussions like this. I'm not saying it's not a valuable discussion, and it perhaps is something we should do, but it's speech-making and fear-mongering up here in our council reports is, in my opinion, not what that's intended to be. Thank you.
And I don't have any additional report. The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.